Well, George Rowe is a massive day for Tim Tszyu, No Limit, and Australian boxing fans. Tell us when you woke up this morning and you saw that the IBF had mandated the fight with Bakhram. What was your feeling?
Yeah, look, I was excited. I was excited not only for the team here at No Limit, who have put in a hell of a lot of work leading up to this point and getting this result, but mostly for Tim Tszyu, coming off the back of the disappointment of the Fundora fight to be bouncing straight back into a world title fight in his next fight, a fight that has been on his radar for a long time, and a fight that I know that he really wants and he's really excited about.
Tell us what was it like making that call, or how did Tim find out that he was getting the shot straight after coming off of the loss?
Yeah, look, obviously we spoke with Tim's team and passed the messages along. At the moment, Matt and Glenn are both over in the USA, so they were happy to pass on the news to Tim, and for him, it's an exciting result. It's an exciting outcome. The difficulty for Tim is that when you're as good as he is in this division, people don't want to step in the ring with you, and you need to have that belt or be forced to be fighting for that belt to get them opportunities, and that's a situation he's in right now. Now he's mandated to fight for the IBF World Title.
Was there a thought ever of perhaps Tim having a fight before getting this shot, or was it always the way to try and get Tim to get a belt as quickly as possible again?
Look, Tim's good enough to fight for a belt. He's he's the best in the division. He's absolutely the best in the division, and he doesn't need a chin-up fight. He doesn't need something to lead to a world title. When a world title's available, he's ready for it, and he's capable of winning it. So, the fact that this was able to come around rather than a world title eliminator, a great result for Tim and a great result for the team.
Is there a little bit of obviously good fortune for Tim this time around compared to obviously what he endured back in March with Fundora, in the fact that he was mandated to fight Lubin and that fell through, and then now it's come, that they've mandated to go for the full title instead of just having to have another fight maybe in between. Is that something that you guys are stoked by? Tim's happy too as well.
Everybody's happy with the result. The Lubin fight would have been very exciting. The Lubin fight is still one that we'd love to have at some stage. I think Erickson Lubin is a great opponent, and will make for an exciting fight. But the world title against Bakhram Murtazaliev is an even better result. It's the best result, to be honest. It's what we've been working towards for the last few months, and the hard work has got to this point where Tim will now fight for a world title in his next fight.
Tim mentioned that the background was someone that he's been on his radar obviously for a number of years. He was in line as well as Tim for a shot at Charlo that neither ended up getting. So there's a little bit of while never crossing paths, there's a little bit of history between the pair as well. So you guys would have known a long time out that this was a possibility that Tim Tszyu could be fighting Bakhram at some stage.
He's been a top 10 guy for a long time. Bakhram's been well and truly a top 10 guy for a long time. And, he also experienced the situation of waiting for Charlo like we were for quite some time. So he's been in and around that top tier level for a very long time. So Tim watches everybody that's out there because they'll all end up on the other side of him at some stage. And given how active Tim likes to be, he needs to have a long list of opponents that we can choose from. So he's been a guy whose name has come up a few times. And when we were chasing Charlo to get that opportunity, Murtazaliev was a name that came up a few times. And now it's finally here, but it's here for a belt, which is even better. Fighting for the prestigious IBF World Title, I think is the best way for this fight to take place.
It's an absolutely stacked division, the 154 now, with obviously Terence Crawford becoming a champion as well in his own right on the weekend. Should Tim Tszyu, beat Murtazaliev and become the IBF world champion, a two-time world champion. What sort of opportunities are out there for him?
Yeah, well, look, Terence Crawford has a belt now. Terence Crawford's on the list. There's a lot of great fights in this division for Tim Tszyu, and it's probably starting to become one of the hottest divisions in world boxing. You know, we've seen the lightweights, the super lightweights, the heavyweights have all been having some massive fights, but right now the fights that exist for Tim, you've got Crawford, you've got Errol Spence, you've got Fundora, you've got Jamel Charlo coming back. You've got Lubin just there as well, who is another great fight. There are so many really good fights for Tim to be involved in. And, the beauty of Tim Tszyu is that he'll fight absolutely anyone, anytime. So he's ready for them all. And while right now his focus is on preparing for a world title fight, the IBF World Title fight with Murtazaliev, he is still ready for all of them to line up and be next.
Talk us through what the process is over the coming weeks with the obviously the deadline. There's a few weeks to obviously do negotiation. Is the hope that Tim Tszyu can still fight around that September date? And if so, is it likely to be in America, or is it still the desire to have one of those fights in Australia?
We always desire to have fights in Australia. I think when Tim Tszyu fights in Australia, it's a good time for not only Australian boxing, but for Australia as a whole. I think Australia does a really good job of getting behind Tim Tszyu and supporting Tim Tszyu. But right now, the situation we're in is that we've been mandated to fight the champion. The champion has a lot of rights of his own, so there's a good chance that this fight could end up in the USA. And while I said we'd love to have the fight here in Australia, where we know we'll get a massive crowd, we'll know we'll have a huge buzz. The risk is that it could end up in the USA fighting against Murtazaliev. But that's something that Team Tszyu is not worried about at all. Tim's actually at the moment he's in Las Vegas for his training camp, so another couple of weeks in Las Vegas isn't going to hurt him. He'll absolutely love it, and for us, it's the same thing. We had a great experience in March with the show that Tim had over in Las Vegas, and while the result didn't go our way, it didn't sway us from wanting to come back and having more shows there and putting on more big fights. And for Tim Tszyu, he will fight anyone, anywhere, anytime. So we'll go through those negotiations now. We'll work really hard on getting a good result for Tim Tszyu and No Limit Boxing, and we'll have some good news soon, hopefully.
And just touching on some stuff that happened 24 hours previously, or even less than that, than the good news coming for you guys and Team Tszyu was obviously the Terence Crawford fight. Turki Al Sheikh was heavily involved in that fight. He made some comments on social media saying that there was some miscommunication between Team Tszyu and his management, and what direction he would be taking with Tim Tszyu in the future. Can you shed any light on that for fight fans?
Yeah, well, look, they put on a great show in LA. I thought it was a fantastic show. It's great to have someone like His Excellency involved in the sport and doing what he's doing. We've been heavily focused on this IBF outcome for a number of months, as I mentioned. So we've been focused hard on that, and that's been the journey that we've been looking to get the result for, and that's where we're at right now. Is that within 24 hours, the result of what we've been working on was announced. So, he was able to see for himself that Tim's going to be fighting for the IBF World Title. And I get that they want to talk about Tim. I get they want to say his name. You can't come into the 154-pound division without mentioning Tim Tszyu. Tim Tszyu is the name in the division, and you want to come into here, even if you're Terence Crawford, a pound for pound king. You've got to acknowledge that this is Tim Tszyu's division, and if you want to take over it, you've got to try and get through Tim Tszyu first.
And just on the Terence Crawford fight, how did you see it playing out? What did you make of sort of the judges' scored cards, and also some comments afterwards, sort of from Eddie Hearn and the like? How did you see it all unfolding?
Yeah, look, I thought Madrimov fought a great fight. Terence Crawford is a pound for pound king, and he showed his class coming up to 154. I thought he won the fight. I thought he won it fair, and he showed that he's going to be very dangerous at this weight. But again, Madrimov fought a fantastic fight. He fought to the best possible version I think he could against Terence Crawford. And the outcome, the outcome landed the way it did. Eddie Hearn's very loyal to his fighters. He's obviously gonna want to stick up for his fighter and say that he felt the way that he did, but it is what it is. I thought Crawford won the fight, and I thought Crawford really showed his class. But no disrespect to Madrimov at all. I thought he put on a fantastic performance.